On the IELTS speaking test, you are expected to show a range of vocabulary. And that means that you have to use like slang and idioms and natural phrases if you're going to get a high score.
Welcome to another Happy English podcast coming to you from New York City. And here's your English teacher, Michael.
All right. Thank you, John. And thanks, everyone. It's Michael here from Happy English, and I help people speak English better. And this is Happy English Podcast, episode 692. And I am so excited today, and here's why. A lot of you recently have been asking me questions about the IELTS exam, and today I have a super duper special guest. This is Jessica from IELTS Energy. She is the guru of gurus when it comes to the IELTS exam. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much. I was an IELTS examiner for 14 years. So that should make me a guru. Thousands of speaking and writing tests I graded.
So when you say you were an examiner, does that mean that you would like pick up the test and you would look at it carefully?
Yes, exactly. I would look for tears in the paper. You know, I would just make sure that it was quality.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So taking all of that knowledge, when I started to work for All Ears English, which I know your listeners love as well as they should, we developed a spin-off of All Ears English, a sister podcast called IELTS Energy. So that's the one that I'm on.
Excellent. So I guess my listeners, if they want to find that, they can just do that search, right? IELTS Energy.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Wherever you are listening to Happy English right now, just in the search bar, type IELTS, IELTS, IELTS Energy, and you'll see us. We're going to pop up. We're the only ones named IELTS Energy, and we are everywhere that podcasts exist.
Awesome. And so today, Jessica's here because she has an English lesson based on the IELTS and some IELTS points that we're going to talk about. So let's jump in. What are we going to learn today?
Yeah, sounds good. So, guys, I am here to teach you 3 fancy schmancy transition phrases. Fancy schmancy. Michael, do you say fancy schmancy? Is that something that you say?
I think that's a phrase that I've been known to say periodically. Like when you go to that very, very shoo French restaurant in Manhattan. Oh, that's we had a very fancy schmancy dinner at that restaurant. Something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. What does that mean, fancy schmancy?
Fancy schmancy is a fun way to say something is just really, really nice and probably expensive.
Right.
So you would use it if you're sort of making fun of the experience in a way, like, I'm not used to this. I don't often experience these fancy schmancy places. But also, guys, like, here is how I can connect that phrase to IELTS, because I can connect anything to IELTS. On the IELTS speaking test, you guys, you are expected to show a range of vocabulary. And that means that you have to use like slang and idioms and natural phrases like fancy schmancy if you're going to get a high score. So on our podcast, you guys, we teach you slang, we teach you idioms, we teach you a bunch of different skills that you need, not just for IELTS, but for life, right? Like, how do we read and understand texts? How can we understand what we're listening to if they're speaking quickly and maybe it's boring? How do we pay attention when we're listening? But also, of course, vocab, like I'll teach you today.
Right. And, you know, having all of that fancy schmancy vocabulary is what brings you from the textbook level of using English to the more natural way of using English.
Yeah.
Because that's how people talk. That's how people talk in everyday
Exactly.
life. That's how people talk on TV and in movies. So
Exactly.
somebody said to me, oh, well, slang and idioms, that's just casual language. That's not very important. And I thought, yeah, that is very, very important because that's what we speak. So
that's how we talk.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how many students have come to you saying, I have been studying English my whole life, or I've been studying English since kindergarten. Why can't I understand you? Why can't I understand my coworkers? Because, guys, we don't talk like you learned in a classroom, obviously. And on the IELTS exam, you can't talk like that either. Because at the end of the day, it is an English test. You know, you have to be able to speak naturally like a native speaker if you're going to get a very high score.
So that's the tip to getting a higher score, right? So speak naturally. Yeah. It's not that you can, it's not just using fancy schmancy vocabulary, but it's using it in a natural way and not sounding like a textbook.
Exactly. So guys, today I have prepared 3 fancy schmancy phrases
ding, ding, ding.
that you can use to link your ideas or transition into ideas. Because part of what you are scored on in IELTS speaking and writing is your ability to organize your thoughts and your ideas. So we need phrases to glue these ideas together, right? So there are informal ways of doing that. You can do that in speaking part 1, but these phrases today, these are higher level. These are more formal. So these are good for speaking part 3 when the questions get more difficult, more academic. And then of course, these phrases are great for formal writing, just like on IELTS.
All right, cool. So let's jump in.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, so the first phrase is as a case in point. I love this phrase. It sounds so smart. Guys, here's the cool thing. It's not hard to use because all it means is, for example. Like, that's it. It has a very simple meaning, but it sounds really cool. So, guys, I'll give you an example sentence, okay? So let's say on the test, you are asked about the airline industry. Okay, I know this is weird. It seems like it's out of left field, but in speaking part 3, guys, there are questions like, how do you think the airlines might change in the future? Like, that's a real IELTS question. So here's an example of how you can answer that. You could say, as a case in point, I read recently that fewer people are flying after COVID. This means that the industry is already changing. Right? So maybe your opinion is like, no, it's going to change a lot because the world changes so quickly as a case in point. And then you use that to introduce something specific.
So as a case in point is used to give an example, the same way you would say, for example. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. On IELTS Energy on our podcast, we love to teach you guys phrases that sound super fancy, that sound really impressive, but actually the meaning is very simple because then it's easier to use. That's what we need to focus on, right? If you're trying to learn a bunch of new vocab.
Right. And as a case in point, the phrase as a case in point works. Did that work? Did I use that correctly, teacher? Okay.
You know what, guys? Here's a cool thing to remember. Even native speakers have a tricky time finding words sometimes.
Right.
As a case in point, Michael and I are poor professional speakers and we still stumble.
That's right. That's right. As a case in point, I just stumbled over that phrase.
Perfect. Oh my God. Excellent. So many examples today, you guys.
All right.
All right. So my second phrase is just to introduce like advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons. And I mean, Michael, like how often in your conversations, just daily conversations, do you talk about like the good points and bad points of something, right?
Happens
like
all the time,
we say this every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to teach you guys not just a phrase for IELTS, but this is something that you can say in real life to sort of make your make your conversation more interesting. Have fun speaking English. So instead of saying one good thing is, one bad thing is, you could say one gigantic upside is. So one gigantic upside of having the job that I do is I get to come on awesome podcasts like this one.
And one gigantic upside of my job is having awesome guests like you on my podcast.
We have awesome jobs. As a case in point, we are working right now.
That's right. Even as a case in point, our jobs are so awesome that we can laugh while we're working. Let's see you do that on Wall Street, Mr. Smitherstein. I was trying to find a fancy schmancy name.
That is a fancy schmancy name. It's so fun to say. Yeah. I'm gonna name a dog that. Hello, Mr. Smitherstein. That'd be a great dog name.
Absolutely.
All right. So on the flip side of saying something is great, you can also say something has a disadvantage, right?
Right.
So we could say one gigantic downside is, let's see. So on IELTS Speaking Part 1, you are often asked about your job, what you do for work, stuff like that. So all of these examples that Michael and I are giving you are actually really useful for the test also. So, oh gosh, let's see. One gigantic downside of my job is that I'm always at work. Because I work from home.
Yes, that is working remotely is definitely one gigantic downside of, being your own boss and having your own business.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, tons of upsides for sure, but nothing's perfect. I did have to reach for that downside because really it's mostly upsides, I gotta say.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right. So my last phrase, and now again, we're getting into something that is super fancy schmancy, that is great for writing, also for more formal speaking. Mm-hmm. So if you want to introduce a solution, right? Something to solve a problem. We could say, in order to resolve this issue, comma, and then introduce a specific solution. So the reason I chose this phrase is because yes, it's useful in real life for sure. Even at work, you're in meetings, you're talking about solving problems, right? Mm-hmm. But on the test, one of the essays you might have to write is a problem solution essay. So this is perfect for that. And also in Speaking Part 3, you're asked about problems and solutions. So I will give you an example. And then this helps to demonstrate an IELTS tip also. So, okay, the example is, in order to resolve this issue, society must invest more in education.
Oh,
so
nice.
Here is a tip, guys. Every problem that IELTS gives you in speaking and writing and asks you to solve, education and government money, those two solutions solve every problem that IELTS gives you. So there you go. You don't even have to think of your own ideas. Just those two things solve everything.
How do you mean by that? Because I'm not so familiar with the test. You mean those two
Sure.
answers will solve everything, or?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. So let me give you an example of an IELTS question for task 2.
Okay.
It could say, let's see. Student behavior has noticeably become more troublesome, or students in school have become less respectful than they were in the past. What are the causes of this problem, and what are some possible solutions? Okay. So basic problem, right? Kids are the worst. No, I'm just kidding. Kids are really not great at schools these days. And I'm a substitute teacher in public schools, once a week. And this is true. So anyway,
goodness.
That's the problem you're presented with. And we could say, well, first of all, education starts at home, right? So we take this education as a solution. And we say caregivers must focus on, educating their children more about respecting authority and meeting expectations, or government money, let's say. The government needs to spend more on increasing our quality of education. So the students are the students are more comfortable and feel more accountable in schools with a cleaner environment. I don't know. This is just off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So those two areas, education and government money, could solve a lot of the problems that you're asked on the IELTS exams.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Because every problem they give you, it's like, something about the environment, something about like social issues, stuff like that. So any of these, kind of generic and well-known problems like pollution, the disappearance of the middle class. Okay, that wouldn't be on IELTS. But anyway, any of these social and environmental problems that you're asked to discuss, education, government money.
Right. All right. That's a fourth good tip today. Nice.
There you go.
Excellent.
So, Michael, out of these phrases today, would you say that you use them in daily life, or are there specific situations that you would talk like this? Like, as a case in point, the upside is, in order to resolve this problem, like, do you talk like that?
I think the last one seems a little formal for me.
Yeah.
But if I was in a business meeting or if I was in some kind of a negotiation, I would definitely need that. If I was, fighting with a company about a refund through email, I might say,
totally.
You sent me my widgets in the mail, but half of them were broken. So in order to resolve this issue, I think you should give me a 50% refund, blah, 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 or whatever. So yeah,
totally. Yeah.
I mean, that was just as a case in point. Not exactly a fancy schmancy answer, but just as a case in point.
That was so good.
Yeah. I mean, a gigantic upside of my response to you there was something that used the phrase you taught me today as an example. How'd I do, teacher?
I'm going to say you get an IELTS Band 9 today, which is the highest score that one can achieve.
Is that like a band like a rock band, like the Beatles, or a different kind of?
I wish.
Oh, you see, that's what happens when you get two crazy English teachers in one room trying to have a very serious conversation about a gigantic upside of something.
I'm not great at the serious conversations. I can, I have the ability to speak in fancy schmancy terms.
Right.
But even in situations where like I am required to be very sober, very serious, and I must use fancy words and impressive ideas, I will nevertheless find a way to giggle at something or make a joke. And it's rare that the other person doesn't then laugh and relax also, know, but unfortunately, some people have like zero senses of humor, which I find hard to like communicate with.
That's for sure. And, especially when it comes to learning a second language, you have to keep yourself relaxed. You have to keep your sense of humor up. Because there are going to be times when you might make mistakes that are funny, and so you laugh at that, and you just enjoy the ride, because this is an interesting ride. It's like a little journey that we're all on as language learners, and sometimes you hit a bump in the road, and then you spill your coffee, and then you go, as case in point.
Well, in order to resolve that bump in the road, I recommend listening to IELTS Energy.
There you go.
So, guys, you can hear how I am speaking right now. This is exactly like I am all the time. My co-host is Aubrey Carter, and she is also very smart and very silly. And guys, we don't teach you anything that isn't real English, that isn't useful. So if you want, if you're, especially guys, I recommend IELTS Energy. If you feel like you might hit a plateau in English, which on this language learning journey, guys, it does happen. Sometimes you're just banging your head against the wall and you're like, I don't feel like I'm improving at all. Like I'm stuck. I am stuck with this English I have. Where do I go? So a great way through that block, guys, is to change the way you're studying. And there's a number of ways you can do that. But preparing, not even if you're going to take the test, but learning English through IELTS preparation with IELTS Energy is such a fun way to get new perspective and new language into your life, guys. So again, wherever you're listening right now, just search IELTS Energy. You'll see what I look like and Aubrey, bright yellow cover, and hit follow.
There you go. As a case in point, all of the fun that we had on this podcast today, could you imagine how much fun you'll have listening to IELTS Energy? And how do you spell that again?
It's so fun.
It's IELTS Energy.
Yes, sir. IELTS and then Energy. And I think, guys, you know why energy is in the title.
There you go. Now you know, as a case in point.
As a case in point, this conversation shows energy. Feeling tired of studying English? In order to resolve that feeling, listen to IELTS Energy. A huge upside is more awesome vocabulary.
There you go.
Bam.
Excellent. All right. Well, Jessica, that's about all the time we have for today. And that's about all of the energy that I can muster up from this fancy schmancy conversation. So thank you so much for hanging out today.
Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you for letting me come on the show, Michael.
Absolutely. So if you want to, as a case in point, if you want to hear Jessica Moore and Aubrey talking, then you need to just go into the search bar, look for IELTS Energy, and you'll see them with their bright yellow background, smiling at you, ready to give you lots of examples and IELTS Energy as a case in point. Something like that?
Great. Awesome.
All right, Jessica, you have a great day and catch you later on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael. You too. Bye.
Yes, it's always a ton of fun when Jessica comes on the program. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that helps you improving your IELTS score. By the way, if you'd like to get more practice using your English, why don't you join my Podcast Learners Study Group? There, you can make new international friends, join me for live group coaching every week, plus get the PDF transcript and audio download for every Happy English podcast in the past and in the future, including this interview. And each episode has exercises where you can practice this English point with speaking and writing checked by me. To learn more or to see some of the example sentences from this lesson, just visit myhappyenglish.com and choose podcast lesson 691. Remember, learning another language is not easy, but it's not impossible, and I'm here to help you on your journey.
This podcast is brought to you by Happy English. Please visit myhappyenglish.com. Show your support for Happy English by leaving us a review. Get English. Get happy. Happy English.